Hi guys, and welcome back to Dice Down Gaming. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the spell rack in Warmachine MK4, how it operates, if I think it's good for the game or not, and if I don't, is there a way I think we can improve it or change it. Before I do that, a massive thank you to anyone who subscribed to me so far. If you like this video and you're not subscribed, I'd be really grateful if you subscribe and drop a like on the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on the spell rack. Do you think it's good, bad? Would you change it or would you not change it? With that out of the way, let's get into the meat of the video. So the Warmachine spell rack currently operates as a pool of 10 spells. Each army list has their own pool of 10 spells. A leader model has a spell rack, and you have spell slots. You can have 1, 2, or 3 spell slots. And pre-game, you get to pick spells from that pool of 10 spells according to how many spell slots you have. Now, I'm sure most people know how it works, just in case anyone wasn't. I thought I'd cover that. And so I suppose the question I've posed is, do I think the Warmachine spell rack as it operates now is good for the game? And I think the answer is no. I think there's a few reasons for that, and I'm going to go through them. So first of all, I think when I first started playing a game and I was told about the spell rack, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I have 10 spell choices every game, and I'm sure I can pick and choose them for the tech pieces that I need. And very quickly, it was very apparent that there's a few very good spells, like in Brian Bloods, for example. Fury Strength you will always take if you're taking Marauder Crew. Um, Fortify is a great default pick, +2 armor, you can't be pushed or slammed. It's fantastic. There's some spells which aren't so useful, such as Tides of War, or Tide Pool, or Powder Keg. Open Fire is very niche. So, even though I did have these 10 spells and I could pick any of them every game, very quickly it became that I pick Fury Strength very regularly. I might pick Fortify if I want to answer something that wants to drag me in, or will try and push me for a feat, or I want that extra armor. And then maybe there's some tech spells like Black Spot or Perdition or Fortune. I might rack in some cases, or Rough Siege if I'm going to face against shooting. So you have these 10 spells, but really you tend to have 5 or 6 spells because there's no opportunity cost to picking these spells. So why would you pick one of the poorer spells when you can pick the better spells? So I think even though you have these pool of 10 spells, in every game you could pick one of 10. Really, you're picking similar spells every game. And what I think that this leads to is, and what we see quite commonly, when I look through the events every month, is that often one list is able to cover an extremely lot of matchups because of this option to rack in these tech spells as you want. I'll use my own point of reference. I have Rough Seeds in my spell rack, which if someone shoots a model in my control range and I've cast Rough Seeds, they have to roll an additional dice and throw away the highest dice. So that protects me into gun lines fairly well. If I stack that with things like Force Barrier, Duck and Cover, Blur from Flower Blood, Terrain, I can really effectively cover gun lines by racking Rough Seeds. If I'm not playing a gun line, I don't need to rack Rough Seeds. If I'm playing someone that's got higher defense or lots of units where I think I can get a lot of value from Black Spot, I can rack Black Spot. It's a map fixer for me. Um, Perdition can extend my Warbeast threat range if I feel like I'm out threated. And this sort of thing really brings home the point that that's the reason I think that so many lists can cover so many matchups, and why we see, for example, 5 or 6 round events, people just playing one list because they can rack in these tech spells as necessary. I don't think that's ideal for the game. I think ideally warlocks have answers to some things, but not everything. And then that warlock's got a bit more of an identity, a bit more of a soul to it, and then you can't cover everything with one list. And it makes a bit more of an interesting matchups and interesting list pairings because you've got a list that answers a few things but not everything. You've got two of them, so you've got most things covered, and then that list pairing sort of decision becomes a lot more interesting rather than, for example, Sea Raiders nearly always picking Horus because not only is the best warcaster in the faction, but he's got access to all the best spells because so is all their warcasters. So why would you not take the best warcaster and then rack the best spells for every game? Um, So I think that's one downside of the flexibility of the spell rack is that it's allowing people to run one list for 5 or 6 games. I think another thing for me is it adds to the lethality of the game. If every if you are say Crix Necrofectorium for example, on their rack they've got Calamity and they've got Carnage, so you can mat fix your army and you can have an armor swing in your army. Now, if one Warlock had that, maybe that would be your answer to your armor skew. But every sorry Warcaster, but every Warcaster has access to that. So not only on demand, if you want, can your army generally be Mat 9? Because I would say most commonly things that are running now are Mat 7 or they're Mat 6 with Gang. It makes your army incredibly accurate that every Warcaster can do. If you need that extreme swing, I believe they've also got Simon Touch on the rack. So you can have massive armor swings, and every Warcaster can have those massive armor swings. And I don't think that helps the game in terms of just how personally and locally we agree that how lethal it is. Everything seems to be Mat 8 or Mat 10, and everything seems to hit so incredibly hard that piece trading isn't are you going to kill it, is you will kill this piece. And it's not really a game of attrition, it's a game of putting pieces in places to be removed because everything's so accurate and hits so hard. If not every Warcaster in a faction had access to an armor swing or a map buff, maybe that would reduce that lethality a little bit. I think it might also help leaders come back to feeling a bit unique. I only played Mark 2, I didn't play Mark 1, so I can't speak to that. But there's some key spells that come to mind, like telekinesis, that was only on a few Warcasters or Warlocks, and that spell felt massively unique. And I think having these, you do have unique spells on each Warlock, but when every time you play Sea Raiders, they have a Warcaster with Carnage or Inviolable Resolve, or Silence of Death. That uniqueness of of the leader model sort of is taken away from me to a degree. And I think lastly for me, what also negative is that spell rack often can really define the power level of a Warcaster or a Warlock. I think Shadow Flame Charge is a great example where Lilith 1, or sorry, Lilith 5 with only one spell rack feels really really tight, and people would love to have a few more spells and open up that spell rack. Casters that have three spell racks often feel much more powerful in comparison. Um, and I suppose I've listed a few things here that I think make the spell rack not so good for the game. And then the follow up question would be, well, what would you change? There's no point of saying you've got a problem something without trying to propose a solution. So I think what I would love to see is a swap back to having leaders having a fixed spells. If I had, for example, Brian Bloods and Boom Howler, Admiral Boom Howler got Rough Seas for me. Okay, suddenly she's probably going to be my gun line answer. But that means that I've got one list that I can answer gun lines, but I need to look for my other list for maybe answering a meat mounting list or answering armor skew, etc. And I think that will bring back a bit of identity to leader models and create a bit more of an interesting list pairing dynamic. And also maybe we won't see one list play 6 games because if I've only got Rough Seas on one caster, uh, that's going to be my gunline caster. Maybe that also can't answer a mass bodies list or armor skew, or there's a scenario I think I can't play well on that, and I look for another list for that answer. Um, as well as that, I think what is an interesting sort of this topic with this is that currently with the spell racks, if you are to say change Carnage because it's too strong on Horus, that also hits all of the other Sea Raider casters. So while you do reduce Horus's power level, in a way you reduce all of the other Sea Raider caster power level. And you haven't really got that lever then to pull up and down on Warcasters or Warlocks to manage their power. If we maybe return to a fixed spell list for a Warcaster with some unique spells in there, you can maybe tune those unique spells because they're unique to them, and use that as a lever to go up and down. I think as well as that, it will reduce the lethality in the game. You know, if um if Cricks don't have Necrotorium don't have Carnage across their army, it all won't be so accurate. If only one caster in that army list got Carnage, okay, maybe that would be your armor to higher defense skews, and then suddenly again, you not got one list that covers everything. That Warcaster makes maybe feels a bit more unique because that is your map fixer in your army list, and then you can use that lever on that one Warcaster without affecting all of them. Um, I would think that would be beneficial to the game, and maybe there's some sort of middle ground where you don't have a fixed list for every caster, and you cut up the spell rack and potentially give that allocate that to some warlocks, warriors. I don't know, um, but I just think currently for me, the spell rack is it allows the list to be too flexible and answer most things in the meta. So you see these 6 round events with one list played. It adds to the lethality of the game because everyone has access to map fixes, armor debuffs, and every leader model can do that. And I think it takes a bit of like originality and uniqueness away from warlocks or warcasters where they're casting the same spell. Every leader in a army list could be casting the same spell every game because it's the best rack spell to cast. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the spell rack in general. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Would you keep it the same, and why would you? Or would you change it, and why would you change it? Um, Really appreciate if you've got this far in the video. And until the next one, I'll see you then.